Good evening, and welcome to the June 3rd, 2025 meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. This is a regular business meeting this evening, and I see our Carrboro Poet Laureate Liza in the front row. She is going to come and give us a nice poem tonight. Welcome, Liza.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Hello. I want to say hi, and I'm not going to see you all for the next meeting. I'm going to have a guest poet, so I probably won't see the council, at least in this format, back until the fall. So happy summer, because I think next meeting's the last one before the summer break. But we will have a guest. So I brought a poem, one of mine today, that is for Gun Violence Awareness Day, which is we're celebrating on Friday, June 6th. And wanted to bring a poem for that. In memoriam for another mass shooting. It's hard to write a poem for every victim of gun violence. It's hard to live memorializing even some. I didn't think of the victims when driving to Atlantic City, when stopping at travel plazas to buy coffee and peanuts. I didn't think of them when I walked down the boardwalk into the casino. I don't think of them back home when the lights go down in the movie theater. I do think it could happen. I think it did. I don't think of the victims when I walk into the supermarket for apples, milk, a loaf of bread. I think it could happen. At the mall, I think it could happen, but I don't think of the victims and what stores they shopped in, where they bought their clothes, what movies they watched, whether they drank coffee or tea, ate bread or tortillas, enjoyed writing or reading or running or swimming. I don't think about all the people specifically targeted because of who they are or about those who just happen to be somewhere going about their day. I don't think of the victims all day in the street in my home out walking. I think it could happen. When I got my hair cut the other day, the salon TV showed video footage of another shooting. I say to my hairdresser, there are so many guns. She says, it's not the guns, it's the people. I change the subject and don't say anything about the victims I don't think about. It's not because of the fear that I don't think about them. It's because of the grip sadness takes. It grabs me by the neck when I reckon with the loss of other humans over and over. I still consider myself human enough, moral enough, to feel hurt by tragedies of others. People say America hasn't had a battle on its soil in a long time. But when terror becomes normal and you can't pinpoint which arms are friendly, when the guns become too many to be numbered, too powerful to be beaten, a war's come. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Liza. It's a reminder also about the Gun Violence Awareness Day on Friday, June 6th. There will be an event in Chapel Hill at Peace and Justice Plaza starting at 12 noon. Come and wear orange for gun violence awareness. Thank you, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell. So generally here in the town of Carrboro, we generally do fly our orange flags. So that would be Friday, June 6th. Thank you. It's Pride, baby. Everybody know? It's Pride. Yes. But before we get to that, I would like to call up Pilar and other staff members from El Centro Hispano, if you would like to join us here at the podium. I'm also going to call up Councilmember Randy Haven O'Donnell. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell and myself were fortunate enough to be available to attend the Center for Employment and Leadership Program 10th anniversary. This is really an amazing program. Our very own Councilmember Haven O'Donnell has been deeply engaged with this program over the years. We were presented with a plaque that day, and I thought it was very appropriate for this plaque to be given to the town of Carrboro in a public meeting. And so that is the very first thing that we are going to do tonight before I hop into the proclamations. Pilar.
Thank you so much. And I remember when we opened our office in Carrboro in 2010, I got a call from Randy and the mayor at that time saying, you need to get involved in this situation we are living here in Carrboro. And that was the corner where the day laborers stand up to be picked up for work, and how she was fighting for dignity and also supporting the community in general in Carrboro to resolve these issues. So she said, you need to be part of the task force, sorry, that is already working on this. And we did. And 5 years later, with the support of all the stakeholders involved in that task force, but also led by Randy, we were able to open the Casa for Employment and Leadership, CEL, Center for Employment and Leadership today. So 10 years ago, we opened this space where workers can wait with dignity to get jobs, but also we've been able to collaborate with different community colleges to have trainings in vocationals for them so they can have better skills and better paid and income for their families. And we are very proud of that work, but we couldn't be able to do it without the help of the town of Carrboro and, of course, Randy, the mayor, and every person working here to support us. So thank you for that. So, yes, we have this plaque. I'm going to read it from the paper because it's in Spanish, of course. But it says, El Centro Hispano Center for Employment and Leadership Program, on its 10th anniversary, recognizes with deep appreciation Town of Carrboro for their valuable collaboration, commitment, and enthusiasm, which have been fundamental to the growth and continued success of the program. With appreciation and gratitude, confident that we will continue to count on their support, May 10th, 2025. Pilar Rocha Goldberg and El Centro Hispano team. Thank you so much.
I just want to say that the work of El Centro and the development of the CEL, the Center for Employment and Leadership, is a really important model. Not only is it a model for us locally, but regionally, throughout on the Eastern Seaboard and in the nation. It's one of the first. And we were able to develop the vision and the dream because the folks in Carrboro know and understand the importance of work and work dignity and protecting workers' wage and being able to help workers to go beyond their vision of day labor work to fulfilling certification programs at Durham Tech and being able to start their own businesses, entrepreneurial enterprise, by having the tool bank. So, you know, if you haven't been down to El Centro and seen the CEL and see how it works and see how it is a moment of uplift for our entire community, I implore you to do so. So thank you. Thank you all.
Anybody else? Okay. Very good. Very good. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to hand this to Town Manager Tony, and we'll find a nice location It's Pride Month everywhere. And I am very honored to be able to present this proclamation for Pride Month. And whereas lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Pride Month is celebrated nationally each year in June to commemorate the Stonewall riots of 1969. And whereas the town of Carrboro has a proud history of advancing the rights of LGBTQ plus people, including adding sexual orientation to the list of protected categories in the town's equal employment opportunity policy in 1990, being the first municipality in the state to create a domestic partner registry in 1994, being among the first to support civil marriage for same-sex couples and inclusion of LGBTQ plus families in comprehensive immigration reform, being called the first to call for repeal of the discriminatory House Bill 2 in 2016, being among the first with the towns of Hillsborough and Chapel Hill in Orange County to adopt a local ordinance prohibiting discrimination in public accommodations and employment in 2021. Whereas the town of Carrboro has been a pioneer in queer representation with 28 consecutive years of LGBTQ plus mayors, after being the first to elect a gay mayor in 1995, and later the first to elect a lesbian mayor in 2013, and the first to elect a second gay mayor in 2021, having elected multiple LGBTQ plus aldermen and council members, and being first to elect a Latinx LGBTQ plus council member in 2022, and being the first to elect a non-binary council member in 2023. And whereas there is much physical and psychological violence inflicted on LGBTQ plus people, especially trans people and LGBTQ plus people of color, experience disproportionately high rates of poverty. Over 30% of trans and gender non-conforming people have experienced homelessness. LGBTQ plus youth make up a disproportionate number of homeless youth in the United States. And LGBTQ plus youth experience high rates of bullying, harassment, and parental rejection, with accompanying heightened risk of depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. And whereas the General Assembly continues to target LGBTQ plus people through laws such as House Bill 574, which prevents trans youth from participating in middle and high school sports, House Bill 808, which bans best practice medical care for trans youth, and Senate Bill 49, North Carolina's own Don't Say Gay bill, which were all vetoed by North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper and later overturned by the Republican members of the General Assembly. And whereas the town of Carrboro is committed to defending the human rights of LGBTQ plus people and ensuring that all residents, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, are treated with respect and dignity. And whereas in 2024, Carrboro received a high score of 91 out of 100 on the Municipal Equality Index, a measure of how inclusive the town's laws, policies, and services are of LGBTQ plus people who live and work here. And whereas the town of Carrboro and the town of Chapel Hill have long been partners in affirming their opposition to discrimination, prejudice, homophobia, and transphobia, and we share a commitment to creating a place where all are welcome. And whereas the town of Carrboro and the town of Chapel Hill will co-host Small Town Pride, a series of celebrations that will include community and partner events like Carrboro Orgulo Pride and others. Now, therefore, I, Barbara M. Foushee, Mayor of the town of Carrboro, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim June 2025 to be Pride Month in Carrboro. I encourage all residents of Carrboro to celebrate and affirm their LGBTQ plus family members, friends, and neighbors, to take action to defend their human rights and to participate in small town pride events in Carrboro and Chapel Hill throughout the month. This, the third day of June 2025. There it is. I would like to invite Milan. Is Milan? Yes, there's Milan, to come up and accept the proclamation, and please feel free to say a few words. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Foushee. Happy Pride, y'all. It's just the beginning of a long month of celebration for us. I have the honor of standing before you this evening as chair of Equality North Carolina Foundation Board of Directors, founded in 1979 to provide legal services to LGBTQ plus individuals in North Carolina who were being prosecuted for crimes against nature. That was a long time ago. Today, ENC is the oldest statewide LGBT advocacy organization in the United States, providing both education on issues that impact the LGBTQ plus community and legislative advocacy. As you may know, Eleazar Posada, in addition to being the first out Latino elected in North Carolina and on your town council, serves as executive director of Equality North Carolina. He doesn't have enough jobs, I don't think. Under his leadership, ENC is spearheading the development of an intergenerational, multiracial, cross-class, gender-expansive coalition of organizations for change, of which El Centro Hispano is one of our partners. This is the tomorrow that we are all dreaming and working for. While you may from time to time hear Eleazar refer to us, the board, as his bosses, you all know by working with him who the real boss is. All joking aside, his work and our work have become increasingly urgent over the last 8 months. Tonight, I want to thank you, the Town Council and the Town of Carrboro, for being a pioneer, as Mayor Fushi has already stated, on the road to LGBT equality, and now for being an enduring ally on this journey, which has once again become perilous, perhaps as perilous as it has ever been, particularly for the trans community. People have come to think of Pride as a raucous gala of fun floats, festive parties, rainbows, glitter, and unicorns sponsored by major corporations. Not Carrboro, of course. Older members of our community will say Pride was a riot, a protest, resistance to oppression. I'm not calling you old, Mayor Fushi. I know you just said that. And it's true, Pride has been all of those things. But before Pride was any of those things, it was first, and for every LGBT person you know, a love story, which we first had to learn to tell ourselves, and then which we sought to tell out loud to everyone else. And it has been in our ability to tell that story publicly and proudly that the LGBT community has been fomenting progressive change in every sector, in every municipality, in every state of this nation. This proclamation of Pride comes at a time when public support of the LGBT community is deeply necessary. At ENC, we receive it, as I believe it is meant, a love letter from the town of Carrboro to our community, and a commitment to protecting the values of love, acceptance, joy, community, inclusion, celebration of difference, safety, and authenticity that the LGBT plus community embodies. It's with the care and commitment of our family and allies that we'll transform this time and these challenges into a future worthy of every love that we choose to story. Thank you, town.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to back tonight. Juneteenth. We do have a proclamation in honor of the upcoming Juneteenth holiday. Whereas Juneteenth is the oldest national commemoration of the emancipation of enslaved African Americans in the United States. And whereas Juneteenth takes on more significance this year because it marks the 160th anniversary of the holiday and continues to be a day of reflection on the ongoing fight for equality and justice. And whereas Juneteenth is a celebration of Black history, culture, and resilience, and provides a platform for community engagement and education. And whereas on June 19, 1865, Union Army General Gordon Granger landed at Galveston Island, Texas, with approximately 2,000 troops. The Civil War had ended the previous month, and these Union forces were tasked with taking control of Texas and enforcing the Emancipation Proclamation. And whereas that same day, on the balcony of Ashton Villa, General Granger read his General Order Number 3, which stated, "The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor." And whereas the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed by President Abraham Lincoln on September 22nd, 1862, but the slaves in Texas were unaware of it until being told by General Granger. Reaction to the news ranged from jubilation to shock, and the freed slaves took to the streets to celebrate. And whereas in the years that followed, June 19th was commemorated by the holiday of Juneteenth, combining the words June and 19th. And whereas on January 1st, 1980, Texas became the first state to recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday, and on August 23, 2007, North Carolina approved Session Law 2007-450, an act recognizing Juneteenth, National Freedom Day in North Carolina. And whereas, although Juneteenth is not a North Carolina state holiday, on July 14, 2020, the Carrboro Town Council adopted a resolution designating Juneteenth as an official paid holiday for town employees and urged state and federal legislators to sponsor legislation making Juneteenth an official state and federal holiday. And whereas on June 17, 2021, the United States Congress approved the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, and President Joe Biden signed the bill the following day, making Juneteenth National Independence Day a federal holiday. Whereas the annual Chapel Hill Carrboro Juneteenth celebration is going to move to Carrboro this year, will be held on Thursday, June 19th from 4 to 8 p.m. at Carrboro Town Commons, and will include fellowship, music, speakers, vendors, and amazing food. It is absolutely for everyone. And now, therefore, I, Barbara M. Foushee, Mayor of the town of Carrboro, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim Thursday, June 19, 2025, to be a date for the celebration of the Juneteenth National Independence Day in Carrboro. I encourage all residents to carry the spirit of Juneteenth with them all year long and learn more about the history of Juneteenth this, the third day of June 2025. And I am going to call to the microphone Fred Joyner. He is our former Carrboro Poet Laureate. I invited him because of his very deep history about Juneteenth, and I welcome any and all comments and poems, whatever.
Thank you. I just want to, before I start my comments, I wanted to say how appropriate it is that Pride and this Juneteenth holiday are celebrated on the same day, because the struggle for African American rights weren't just have never historically only been about African American rights, right? They've been about human rights. And if you look at the people who have been at the forefront of that, many of those people have been our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. And being from North Carolina, I know y'all know Pauli Murray. Pauli Murray, the Brown versus Board of Education would not have happened if not for Pauli Murray. So yeah, give it up for Pauli Murray. Exactly. And that's one example. Bayard Rustin. Martin Luther King would not have been who he had been without Bayard Rustin. Those are two minor examples, right? So I just want to say that I love living and working in Carrboro, because we live in a kind of place that can honor that tradition and that history. So, my comments. Thank you, town, for this proclamation. This is absolutely necessary. You mentioned history. I think history is we know that history is of the utmost importance in this moment. We are living in a moment where, in a post-fact post-history moment where, you know, the wolf is is in the hen house. And so we have to be vigilant about protecting our stories, telling our stories, and propagating those stories, documenting and archiving those stories. To that end, I wanted to acknowledge Harry Jones. Harry Jones was my mentor. In my tradition, I call it Jegna. It's a teacher. It's an East African term that means teacher. He was the foremost scholar on the African American contributions in the Civil War. So what I'm going to say today is paraphrasing him. There's a video on YouTube. You can go and watch him in his very eloquent way. But I did want to lift a few things in the interest of history. Okay, so while we celebrate on June 19th is not the actual day, right? That African Americans in the states in rebellion found out that we were free. We knew we were free. We were born free. So it's not about that. The moment happened actually 2 years before. There were African American troops in Texas. African American troops, the United States colored troops had been in Texas for 2 years. When Granger comes, an African American regiment comes 2 days prior to and take Texas, and so that this is all had already happened, right? Granger's arrival in Texas was ceremonial because African American troops had already been there for 2 years. So this idea that African Americans did not know somehow that they were free is completely absurd, okay? So when we think about Juneteenth, what I want you all to leave with, the lesson that I want you all to leave with are two things. One is historical narrative, the importance of historical narrative, of documentation, of research, of finding the primary sources. We've got an archive of primary sources of people that were there. Those documents exist. We can read them. We don't have to watch a movie. We don't have to listen to tertiary people who have political agendas tell us what the history is. The history exists. So I urge you all to do that. Secondly, so narrative and self-determination. If anything else, if nothing else, I want you to understand that this was about self-determination. African Americans fought, over 200,000 African Americans fought in the Civil War to free themselves. They were not inert recipients of freedom. They were active in it, right? They were active in it. And so these things are necessary. And I want us to also understand, again, Juneteenth is a ceremonial thing. It's like Black History Month. When Carter G. Woodson founded Black History Week, he said, we want you to observe Black History Month to document and share what you've learned all year, right? The fact is, African American, United States colored troops captured Charleston, they captured Richmond, they captured many cities across the states in rebellion, okay? So what I'm proposing is that we all go out and find those dates because they exist. And my friend Harry Jones, in his video, many videos, he has a whole archive on C-SPAN. He passed away a few years ago. Tells us the dates. I think we should celebrate every day United States colored troops walked into a city and freed people, because it's not just about a single day. It's about a continuum of struggle, right? So these are the things that we have to understand. The other thing is that I'm glad Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, but like Frederick Douglass said, that parchment is not going to free anyone. African American troops took up the musket and fought. They were active participants in fighting for their freedom, right? Which is very much like the moment that we're in right now, right? We have to be active in fighting for the things that we believe in. We have to be active in acknowledging pride and acknowledging our brothers and sisters from other places. We have to be active in these things. So I think I covered it all. It's too much to cover. I'm sorry. Your comments were so eloquent. I'm a son of a jazz musician, so I believe in improvisation. So I come up here, I have my notes, I have the score, and then I play, right? So I wanted to close with two short little poems, but I really want to reiterate those two things. When you think about Juneteenth, narrative and self-determination, that is the history, that is the tradition of what Juneteenth is, right? Nothing else. Those things. I urge you to go out, listen to my man Harry Jones. He's got a whole archive out there. I want you to leave with those two things: narrative purity, finding the facts, and self-determination. That's what makes Juneteenth what it is. So I'm going to close with two short little poems. One is by a poet who passed away just recently, maybe a year or two ago, Tyrone Williams. And he wrote this book, short little book of poems about some African-American troops, actually African-American freemen who were forcibly taken by the mayor of Cincinnati to help fortify the city of Cincinnati during an impending Confederate invasion. And when the Confederates got there, they saw that the city was so well fortified that they turned around and ran away. That's how good these people, and they did it under duress because they were freemen and they were basically used a wartime provision, that sounds familiar, to go and fortify the city. And so I'm going to read a little, it's just a short little thing, and then I'm going to close with a poem that I think it captures a little bit more of this essence. So this is from this book called Between Red and Green, Narrative of the Black Brigade. That's what they called that group of people that did this work. We left as men, returned heroes, citizens knighted by the sword we never used, to turn aside the rebels against citizenship for all men. Just so you know, because these were freed men, they were afraid to give them weapons. So the genius of these people, they were so skilled and so focused on obtaining their freedom that they fortified the city, and that was their weapon. They used shovels. That's amazing. That's an amazing feat. They used their hands and feet and energies to fortify the city, and that was their weapon. So this poem, I'm going to close with this. I just want to say thank you all for allowing me and indulging me in this, but in a tribute to my mentor, Harry Jones, I have to honor the history and tell it right, okay? So I appreciate you giving me the time. So I'm going to close with this poem. This poem was not written during the Civil War period. It was written by a poet named Claude McKay, but it captures the spirit of what I think these African-American troops, the United States colored troops, would have been thinking when they did what they did, right? When they went into this war and conquered the Confederates, right? This poem was actually written at another historical moment. It was written in 1919 during the Red Summer. And if you know anything about the Red Summer, it was after United States troops, black troops, came back from the World War. Some people in our country, we were so incensed that it set off lynchings all across the South. Black men were being lynched in their uniform just for wearing the uniform, right? Just for wearing the uniform, because that was seen as an affront to other weak men who could not serve, who weren't fit to serve, or who were too cowardly to serve, right? So this is the history. Again, narrative, self-determination, okay? And so this is a poem that I think that Claude McKay, that the United States colored troops were thinking. And if you look at some of the hymns that they sang, and all that stuff is documented, it's all out there. Some of it is in Harper's, and some of it is right down the street at our archive at Wilson Library, right? Wilson Library has a collection of these things, right? So Thank you, everyone, for indulging me. If we must die. If we must die, let it not be like hogs hunted and penned in an inglorious spot. While round us bark the mad, hungry dogs, While around us bark the mad, hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then, even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us, though dead. O kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave. And for their 1,000 blows, deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? Like men, we'll face the murderous cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying and fighting back. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're taking up a little room here tonight with Pride and Juneteenth. The history is so important, and the times we're living in right now, it never hurts to hear more about it or reiterate. History does matter. It dictates present and future. Next up, let's do Pollinator Week. We have a proclamation recognizing Pollinator Week. Meg Malloy will be accepting this proclamation. Pollinator Week, Town of Carrboro. Whereas in October 2014, the town of Carrboro became the third municipality in the nation to be recognized as a Bee City USA. And whereas, as mayor, I signed the 2025 National Wildlife Federation's Mayor's Monarch Pledge, committing our town to take meaningful action to protect the monarch butterfly. And whereas, the goal of these initiatives is to promote healthy, sustainable habitats for monarchs, bees, and other pollinators. And whereas, the town of Carrboro recognizes that human health ultimately depends on well-functioning biodiverse ecosystems. And whereas pollination provides significant environmental benefits and plays a vital role for trees and plants, producing much of our food supply, creating recreational and economic development opportunities, and enhancing our quality of life. And whereas bees and other pollinators around the globe have experienced dramatic declines due to a combination of habitat loss, use of pesticides, and the spread of pests and diseases with grave implications for the health of flora and fauna. And whereas cities and their residents can support bees and other pollinators on both public and private lands. And whereas the town has worked to create pollinator habitats by installing native bee nest boxes, establishing a pollinator garden, and planting pollinator-friendly vegetation to restore a riparian buffer. Now, therefore, I, Barbara M. Foushee, Mayor of the town of Carrboro, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim June 16th through June 22nd, 2025 to be Pollinator Week in Carrboro. I encourage all residents to attend a pollinator activity at the Farmers Market on Wednesday, June 18th from 3 to 6 p.m. and a pollinator movie screening on Sunday, June 22nd at 3 p.m. at the Century Center. This, the third day of June 2025. Meg is here, and there she is. Welcome. And there you are.
Thank you, Mayor Foushee and council members. I'm Meg. I've lived in and gardened in Carrboro for 36 years, and over those years I have learned much about the natural environment and have appreciated it more every year. I wanted to make two observations about pollinators. One is that the word pollinator is fascinating to me because it's two sides of a unique relationship, and they both have a vital part. A pollinator is, in North Carolina, we have 500 species of native bees, 177 species of butterflies, and 2,800 species of moths that just live in our state that transfer pollen. Pollinators also includes hummingbirds. So all those things can pick up pollen and transfer it to the other plant, it creates 85% of our food that is grown. Pollinators are also the name given to the host plants that are the food for those caterpillars, and they provide energy and pollen for the hummingbirds, the bees, the moths, and the butterflies. So it's both sides of the equation. One is the pollinator critter, and one are the plants that we call pollinators. So the second observation is that each of us can help boost the pollinators by planting pollinator plants, including things like milkweed, goldenrod, salvia, anise, hyssop, mountain mint, or bee balm. And wherever Amy sits, she said that all of the plants that she put in last year were eaten by the deer. She's fairly new in Carrboro, and every single one of her coneflowers and black-eyed Susans got eaten. The one plants that I just mentioned, the deer leave alone. So some are hardier than others, and if you don't want to worry about those, you can also spray Babex on them. But I think many of them are pretty hardy, and the deer don't devour them. So, and the thing to think about is that you don't have to do a lot to make a huge difference. You can just get a pack of seeds and put them in one pot on a balcony or at your doorstep, and that can actually help build a pollinator population and improve the habitat. On a larger scale, if you have the opportunity and the interest, you can plant a tree, all kinds of shrubs, flowers at your home, and HOA green spaces, at schools, businesses, apartment grounds, and places like the town of Carrboro that does a good job already on our grounds and in our parks. So we have a good foundation, but we can do more. So I wanted to say, when you do that, your neighbors, people who walk by will start getting interested because it looks so nice. They'll ask you about it. And then they may go home and start to do the same thing. But just wait for a minute, because then the magic happens. You'll start to see bees and butterflies and hummingbirds come into the property, and that's really where both sides of the equation come together. So it's not very hard to do a little bit and make a huge, big difference. I also wanted to say that we are really lucky that our town has the wisdom to be one of the early adopters of this kind of proclamation. Carrboro has been a first in everything you all mentioned tonight in the top group, so thank you for the invitation to be part of thanking the town, and I wish you happy pollinator planting. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Meg. Oh, good stuff here in the borough. Lots of good stuff. My last proclamation is for National Gun Violence Awareness Day, which we already said that will be on Friday, June 6th. And we'll have our very own police chief, Chief ATAC, to join me to accept this proclamation, hopefully say a few words. National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Whereas every day more than 125 Americans are killed by gun violence and more than 200 are shot or wounded. And whereas Americans are 26 times more likely to be murdered with guns than people in other developed countries. And whereas firearms are the leading cause of death for American children and teens. And whereas North Carolina ranks 24th amongst states for gun deaths in the United States, with an average of 1,714 deaths every year, with 56% of gun-related deaths by suicide. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from dangerous people. And whereas, together with our neighbors in Orange County, Chapel Hill, and Hillsborough, the town of Carrboro supports efforts to enact common sense gun safety laws and educate the community on gun safety. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on Friday, June 6th, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June 6th, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives and lost human potential of Americans stolen by gun violence. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now, therefore, we, the Carrboro Mayor and Carrboro Town Council, hereby proclaim June 6th National Gun Violence Awareness Day in Carrboro and encourage everyone to support their local community's efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives, as well as to advocate with state and local elected officials for passage to maintain and enact common sense gun legislation. This, the third day of June 2025. Chief ATAC.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I was really hit by your words earlier, Les. So that's been running around in my head. This is a topic that hits people on a number of levels, right? Professionally, personally, amongst family and friends and all of this. So I'll be very brief, but I appreciate the community efforts. There are a lot of efforts in Orange County for child fatality reduction, for safe storage education. Certainly, your first responders, your police, your fire, and your EMS carry a lot of trauma from responding to those incidents. And as you reflect on the ghost of the things that you've seen, working in this community, it really kind of impacts you. So, thank you for kicking me in the feels. This is a big topic, and I just appreciate that we're kind of got a community effort behind this. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We are down to no update. Oh, okay. So we actually don't have a town manager's update tonight, so I will go straight to public comment. I do have regular public comment, and I have two for the public hearings public comment, which is going to come later in the agenda. Is there anyone here that wants to give public comment on an item other than the budget, or topic other than the budget? All right. So no town manager's update and no general public comment. So we're going to move right along to our consent agenda. Council members, we have 3 items. The consent agenda is part of normal town business. We could take all 3 items in a single motion unless a council member wants to pull an item for future discussion. I do believe that is the case this evening, so I'm going to ask for a motion for consent agenda items 1 and 3. I'm sorry, 1 and 3, if I could get a motion. Thank you so much. Councilmember Posada.
Seconded.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Now. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And Councilmember Posada, consent agenda item number 2.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to pull consent agenda item number 2. There's a couple of questions that I have, and we're working with El Centro and town leadership to answer those questions. I just move that we move this to our next town council meeting.
Yep. Council members, I
Seconded.
don't imagine there will be any discussion, so moved by Councilmember Posada, seconded by Councilmember Frey, that we move consent agenda item number 2 to our June 17th meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, council. That is the consent agenda. We are down, I'll let Town Manager Tony take over here. I'll let folks leave that want to leave. Thank you so much. Town Manager Tony.
It's the public hearing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. We're at the agenda for the public hearing. This is a public hearing on the town manager's recommended budget for fiscal year beginning July 1st of 2025 through June 30th of 2026.
Thank you so much, Town Manager Tony. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there a brief staff presentation or just go straight to the public? Got it. I have 2 people signed up, and if there are others, you're more than welcome also to come up and give public comment about the recommended budget for the next fiscal year. First on the list is Jeremy Williams. Welcome, Jeremy. We are asking 3 minutes or less. And that's about it. Take it away, Jeremy.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and from one public servant to a number of others in the room, thank you for your service. So as you know, the current economic and political climate is very uncertain, and it's fairly bleak in the immediate future. I think now is a time for forced austerity, so that if things worsen, the city has more capacity to handle anything that worsens. The president released his proposed budget Friday at 5, so guess what I did Friday night? I read the whole thing. And it's not very good. It particularly cuts or proposes cutting investments in energy, research and development, public housing, a lot of social services, a lot of things that are going to trickle down to every state and city in the country, but particularly this area. So as this all happens, you know, Duke is doing voluntary layoffs. There's going to be more. There's hiring freezes everywhere. Raises aren't happening. RTI is cutting back some. We're going into a very unknown period. I think we all know that. And so I guess I implore everybody to treat the budget and any tax issues with a lot more caution and to walk into it like it should be a time of you know, belt tightening, just so that if things do get worse, because I don't know if we're going to hit the bottom anytime soon, that there is capacity to do something else. So particularly without knowing what's going to happen with the Orange County reassessment and knowing that there's going to be a school bond that's going to affect other people as well. So I guess I would just ask everybody to rethink anything that's not an absolute essential service to the city or something to sort of protect our most vulnerable. Anything that's a nice-to-have amenity, can it be delayed? Can it be pushed back? I think we all want a thriving community, but I think we're doing pretty well. We could do better. Obviously, a lot of places can do better. But I just ask everybody to just take it seriously. And maybe even think about other opportunities to raise revenues. I haven't seen a whole lot of talk about that. And some things could be, you know, increasing fees developers pay. You know, they're all getting rich off of their investments. So things like that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Next I have signed up is Steve Benjamin. Steve Benjamin, welcome.
Ready?
Ready.
Good evening, council members and town leaders. Thank you for your time and the effort that you put into the budget and preparing this. It's a tremendous amount of work, I'm sure. I want to bring to your attention a question that really came up as I was kind of looking through the impact on my work, and I thought it was interesting, and it may be of interest to you. I think it's a critical item that could have serious implications if left unaddressed. And it's the question of tax revenues from the revenue neutral rate. Plus, as we know, that's the basis that we put the Carrboro adder on. So this kind of arose when I was wondering why my new house tax would go up by 45% when the Carrboro town increase is 20.1%. I didn't understand why that difference, and so I looked at my home, and this is an example. I don't think unique. You'll see. I looked at my home and saw that running my revaluation assessed value of my home at the revenue neutral rate significantly exceeded my current taxes. And maybe I'm mistaken, but my understanding was the revenue neutral was supposed to be somewhat close to current. So anyway, I looked at it, to see it wasn't just me, looked at 19 other homes, and 100% of the homes, the revenue neutral rate is over the is over our current tax rate, which I don't think that's not what's designed to happen. So if we could, I think, take a look at that. The average increase, by the way, is 16.1%. So in effect, we have a 16 point, if this is accurate, my suggestion overall is maybe we want to take one more look at it, just make sure that this is not happening. But it appears it's 16.1% increase, and that's before we ever get to the Carrboro 20% increase. So it would be double billing, basically. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Benjamin. Appreciate it, your comments. That's all the people that I have signed up. If there are others, please feel free to come forth now. You do have 3 minutes to come forth if you want to comment on the town manager's recommended budget for the next fiscal year. Going once, twice. Okay, here we go. We got a pop-up, Hey, state your name, please.
My name is Kate Wetton, and I live on Pathway Drive
All
here
right,
in
welcome.
Carrboro. Thank you. And I spoke here about a month ago, I think, and want to reiterate, I think, what the first speaker said, which is just, again, that this is such a time of, we are just starting to see what might be happening in the future in this area. I personally oversee 36 faculty and lead staff at Duke University, a number of whom live here in Carrboro, and I fully anticipate that none of them will have jobs about 12 months from now. I'm trying to see how to keep people going for the next few months. The cuts that are happening, as were mentioned at Duke, we've got the voluntary layoffs. We're going into involuntary layoffs that will roll out at the end of July, and with people leaving the end of August. So we're just starting to see those. We know our Research Triangle Institute, Family Health International, IPASS, IntraHealth. IPASS is here in our own area. UNC, we're deeply, this area is known for education, for science, for people like I think are in this room who really care about others and who the jobs we take don't bring in a lot of money and often are helped by the government. And I think and those are the kinds of services that our current executive in DC believes our government should not be helping with. And so I'm just deeply concerned about spending, and I agree that this should be a time where, while at this very moment, it may actually seem like people are spending more. I was talking with our auto mechanic who said they're seeing more spending in this moment because people, and I'm doing the same thing, are getting ready so that we don't have to spend anything 3 months from now. So I just caution all of us to be forward-looking, think about what might be coming, and if we overreact, that's okay. We don't need to, overcorrect, but we can overreact by slowing things down, or we can react appropriately. But I think there are going to be a lot of changes coming, and we'll have great solidarity in this community for that. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else? I am going to close this public hearing. There's no further comment. We'll go into council deliberation. At this time, I do just want to say before my colleagues weigh in, I do want to thank our town manager as well as our CFO, the finance team, department heads, all other town staff who brought us a balanced budget and put the work in. It's tough times right now, and this is a tough budget year, and we certainly do recognize that, and we appreciate the the budget document as well. I want to thank community members that have sent emails. We've received a large number of emails about the budget. We've received public comment. Thank you so much for weighing in. And my colleagues, we've talked to community members, we've talked to each other. We've asked the town manager for various scenarios. What happens here if we do this? What happens here if we do that? And so there have been a lot of conversations behind the scenes with council members and the town manager with various scenarios. So there's been work all around, as we begin to think about the adoption of this budget. So I did just want to say that ahead of my colleagues. Colleagues, what do we have? Do we have questions? We have comments, suggestions? Because the next section is the adoption of the budget, if we so choose to adopt the budget. Town Manager Tony, next Tuesday, is there a work session? So we don't have anything for next Tuesday for a work session. And then our business meeting on June 17th appears to be a very heavy one. And that is not to create any pressure for my colleagues to adopt the budget. That is just letting you know the lay of the land for the next few weeks. I see Councilmember Posada.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, before we move into deliberation, I would like to ask for a short recess, so that I want to be part of the conversation, but I need to step out for a couple of minutes. I just want to make sure that I'm here there.
Yeah, so we'll have just a really quick 5-minute recess. So we'll go ahead and continue the meeting at this time. Thank you so much. Council members, questions, comments? We've heard from the public. I did also want to mention, we've had a couple of public hearings. I think we had one council work session around the budget, various interactions with the town manager as we tried to, work with the budget that she presented and get answers to our questions. But certainly tonight is another time to ask more questions and to deliberate if necessary before we consider adopting the budget. This is our time. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell.
Yeah, well, first I want to thank the mayor for your comments to the manager and to staff, because I know that this was a very challenging budget to construct, especially where we stand today, given the last several years. And to that, the manager has been, really clear about what should be recommended from the managerial point of view. And of course, the decision-making lies with the council. And the decision-making and the deliberation that we have tonight is our responsibility. It is not the responsibility, the outcome is not the responsibility of the manager. It is our responsibility, so I want to say that. I want to also underscore the fact that through this process, and all of us here, I'm sure, have, from the conversations I've had, we've gone through the document with a fine-tooth comb, just almost surgically looking for ways to move forward. And now, now the moment of the deliberation and our work in earnest to find a way forward and come up with a budget that meets not only the interests and the needs, but also the expectations of the community. It lies with us. So we need to not only deliberate, but we need to co-construct. And that has been the history of the Carrboro Town Council to deep dive and construct. And I'm saying that because this is a challenge. And this is the first time this council in this configuration has to meet a challenge of this magnitude. So I wanted to just say that before we got into conversation, and it's my fondest wish that we're able to put it all on the table and look at it from the eyes that we, as the employees of the town, the people of the town of Carrboro, are our employers. And they are saying some things to us that we need to pay attention to. And I thank, as the mayor did, I want to thank all the folks who took the time not only to come and speak to us, but also sent emails. So with that.
Thank you, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell. Council members. Mayor Pro Tem now.
I do have a quick question, if it's appropriate, possibly for Chaz or our town manager. I'm curious about Mr. Benjamin's. I can imagine a couple scenarios in which that revenue neutral rate might not be felt in like a sample like that, but if
it's an aggregate.
Right. Yeah, but I think the point is well enough made that yeah, could you clarify for us how that comes to be?
Sure. It is calculated by the total assessed valuation across the town, the town. We use the most up-to-date data provided by the county tax office. That revenue neutral rate is a little tricky. It's not on a house-by-house basis, not that that anyone did imply so, but it also factors in appeals to those revaluation rates. The county tax office assumes that there will be a number of appeals moving forward, and so that revaluation, those slides that the county tax office showed back in March, those are subject to change, and those total assessed valuation numbers will likely be lower. There are a number of exemptions from property taxes. There are some growth assumptions that go into the revenue neutral rate calculation, and there are a number of tax exempt properties. A lot of those tax exempt properties also saw growth in their assessed valuation. Those could include schools or university buildings. If those are on that list, those would not, while the tax base for the town is larger, the levy that we would gather from those buildings would be lower. There's also estimates on a collection rate and some other factors that go into that.
Thank you. That's about what I understood in the contours, but I just appreciate the clarity for anybody who's listening, because I know that this is sort of a daunting thing to experience and understand as an individual homeowner. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there more questions? Certainly, I have some thoughts, and so if we've reached that point of the program, we do take this really seriously. This is a serious budget, and there are a couple of factors that are on my mind really acutely. First, I do want to share the perspective for those listening along that the co-construction of this document began at our retreat over the winter and has been continuous over months. The priorities in this document, there are no surprises here for us in June, nor were there or should have been in May. This is the work of the year that we do, and our priorities are reflected here. This is the conversation that, for everything throughout the fall and next spring, when we're kind of attending to the various many projects that we've been talking with folks about, we're providing for the ability to do that. So it's a continuous co-construction. There is certainly, of course, we are here to deliberate, but there comes a point where that co-construction reaches what I think is a strong consensus. And the reason I think it's a strong consensus, and I just want to talk a little bit about this, because there are really difficult pressures on this budget, and especially with the federal uncertainty. That's something that I personally weigh really strongly. And this budget represents, when I think about the primary budget drivers, we have a couple of capital projects that have been long-time sore spots in town that are finally ready to move. We have the Estes Drive and we have the South Greensboro sidewalk, which we are regularly hearing from people around town. We all experience kids walking by Estes in South Greensboro, and we recognize those as long past due. And so it's hard for me to consider those bells and whistles. It's hard for me to consider our staff salaries bells and whistles, and in particular because one of the positions that we're in with staff salaries is also a reflection of the broader federal public picture, where we had these one-time revenues over the past couple of years. And the way that I have experienced my time individually on this council has been that there has been a little bit of a performance gap in some of our priorities because of the way that we resource our staff. And it has been really important to rectify some of our practices from behind this dais to keep up with best practices from other municipalities and provide staff with tools that they haven't been getting. Very few of our staff members can afford to live here, almost none of them. And if we're looking at a federal environment wherein they're subject to the same economic pressures we're all subject to, I am hard-pressed to continue to ask our staff to deliver, nationally recognized award-winning service. Living here is wonderful, and that's on the back of Public Works and Rec and Parks and our communications department, and so that's one of the major drivers that we have, along with some IT tools that are in the budget. And we all balked at the IT tools a little bit as one of the major primary drivers, but I think for those of us in the room, we can feel the mid-century charm at work with a lot of what our staff has to deal with. And that, like salary, when we are asking, we have very high standards in Carrboro, and we're asking our staff to execute and perform at things without commonplace tools and solutions in other municipalities. It's led to attrition. It's led to organizational problems that essentially I feel like we have spent my 4 years really doing good work to correct. This is in many ways the most stable organizational outlook for sort of factors that are bigger than any single decision maker or decision that we've made, and having a lot to do with the whiplash of the federal picture in times of austerity during the pandemic, and then some sort of abundance, and then some clawbacks, and now looking at, so asking our staff, what is the right way to have our staff as employees bear this uncertainty is something I'm weighing really heavily. And then what does it mean to be able to keep our government functioning in an environment where we are, like, when I think about these capital projects, if you've been following our discussions over the past quarter, you know that DOT projects have become excruciatingly difficult to get done in this state. Since Hurricane Helene, there's almost no money so first we have this law in North Carolina where 94% of transit money has to be spent on highway projects. And that's highway projects. So that's not road restriping, that's not a highway, that's not bus, that's not pedestrian. That's all of it together is 6% of our money. And that 6% is evaporating because of Hurricane Helene and the hostile federal picture. And so I offer all of this because I think almost every single thing in our budget presents a vulnerability to the fear that we share and the uncertainty that we take really seriously. And the primary driver here, most of us have been able in conversation to talk with neighbors. We're reducing our tax rate on assets that have exploded. And I'm a homeowner too. My revaluation made me a little nauseous. And I know that that's a position many of us are in. And so this is where, in the spirit of continuous co-construction, this is the long-running dialogue that I think we've been having over the past year when we talk about our land use ordinance and the way that we think about raising other revenues. With our preempted state picture and our relatively constrained powers as a municipality in North Carolina with a hostile gerrymandered government, our property tax is where we raise our revenues. And we have a fairly brittle tax base that our residents are feeling the effects of right now. We have too few units with too little headroom to bear the investment that we have to continue to make into a town to function. And so where I look at this with optimism is we have undertaken the work in our vision with the land use ordinance, with the downtown area use plan, and a lot of our broader strategic goals in diversifying this tax base. So this is the last time this uncertainty comes home to Carrboro residents in this way. And certainly I know that there are many people who disagree with that approach, with its likely outcome. But I want to offer this at some length because I try to always be mindful of, we've had a couple presentations on the budget. I think the faces in the room mostly y'all have been present with us. I can't see who's listening at home, but this can be abrupt and it can feel abrupt, to have $50 million come to a discussion point that feels, I just wanted to take a little bit of time to, this has obviously been what all of us have been thinking about. And so from my personal perspective, to assure folks that we don't take this lightly at all and that this is, it's difficult to do. And we hope that the long-running discussions that we're having, at least from my perspective, put us in a position to not have to pass this bill on in the way that we continue to. But to have confidence that even with an austere federal moment, even with a hostile state moment, we are doing what we need to do to, this is continuing to ask our staff to do more with less, and they will continue to do more with less. Funding staff time, in addition to the very many bells and whistles and capital niceties that we're not funding, funding that staff time historically in Carrboro has paid off incredibly well. And so to the extent we are able to invest in our staff in a way that allows us, frankly, just to keep pace, which their performance far exceeds, I think is a source of strength for us as we are looking at this federal picture. And so that's long-winded, but because of the way that this discussion unfolds, I just kind of wanted to take a moment and share some of what I'm thinking, because I have had a lot of conversations and we've heard some comments tonight. And so, that is why, after a lot of thought and deliberation, I feel confident moving the agenda item A, the manager's recommended budget. Of course, we'll have further discussion, but I will move the item.
Thank you for that, Mayor Pro Tem. Now, I see Councilmember Frey, Councilmember Posada, Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Mayor Pro Tem Nowell for setting the stage also with those comments. There's something that, as I've been looking through the budget and looking at the math and thinking through it, I just wanted to share some observations that are actually coming in part from conversations that I'm having with colleagues in Chapel Hill, because we're not the only ones facing a challenging environment this year, right? This is region-wide. Carrboro is actually, relatively speaking, insulated from the budget woes, at least, that are coming from the federal level, for the simple reason that we had so little federal funding to begin with, right? That doesn't mean that our residents will not be harmed. That doesn't mean that people will not feel the pinch. But our hard budget decisions this year did not start only with what's going on at the federal level. They actually start with discussions that Carrboro has made over the last couple of decades. I'm talking about our growth rate, the way that we build, the way that we allow our tax base to change or not change. Coming out of this, I learned something interesting, that Chapel Hill's budget analysis included a number that I think is pretty similar to the one that we have in Carrboro. It's an analysis from the tax office of the organic growth rate of Carrboro. So if you think about, I wanted to sort of address this towards the public comment that we got about, like, how does this neutral rate actually work, and why does my number go up even at the neutral rate? The neutral rate is based on taking the entire pie of real estate in Carrboro and dividing it up again relative to its value. So one way that your taxes can go up, even if the neutral rate were adopted, is that your house may simply have increased in value more than other houses. So if you're comparing your house to houses like your house, it may look like everybody's going up. But actually, if you look at the entire pool, the revenue neutral rate is neutral, or at least the tax office's best guess. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't make mistakes, right? We are hearing from folks out in Rogers Road area, we are hearing from folks in black neighborhoods in Carrboro that people are seeing revaluation increases that are disproportionate to what they could actually get in the market, right? The tax office is supposed to revalue based on how much you could actually sell your home for. So if your home, as mine, has gone up by triple digits, but you could actually conceivably sell your home for that much more, then that increase is fair, it is balanced, it's redistributing the pie of tax burden across the town according to the way that your home has changed. But this council actually has the ability, and actually have the ability to influence how that changes. It has to do with how much we build. Because if we build no new homes, then the entire burden of services falls on the same buildings over time. And when that happens, in particular, if home prices go up faster than rents can possibly increase, as has happened in Carrboro, then homeowners pay a larger and larger share of the pie every year. And that happens every valuation, it happens again and again. The other number that goes into that is the natural growth rate. In other words, how fast are we increasing the size of that pie? How many more people are here in Carrboro sharing the property taxes? In Chapel, I don't know what the number is for Carrboro for sure, but in Chapel Hill, I know the number they got was 1% the organic growth rate is 1%. Well, if the Fed hits their target, inflation is 2%, which means that if Chapel Hill or Carrboro, by extension, continues to build the way we're currently building, that is to say, nearly not at all, then Carrboro taxes, the tax rate would have to go up from the neutral rate 1% annually forever, just to make ends meet, just to maintain existing services. Unfortunately, where we are, so we've been in that trap for the last 10 years, and we've absorbed that through our staff as Carrboro has not increased its rate above the neutral rate for many, many years. What's triggered this for us, what's actually triggered our really challenging year, as best I can see, and there is some federal influence on this, but is inflation, right? Is the impact of COVID. We've had a spike of inflation. We can't absorb that hit via, the stagnation of our wages, via putting off, not just bells and whistles, but critical infrastructure, maintenance, and improvement. Our neighboring towns have got budget holes of tens of millions of dollars for things like road maintenance. Relatively speaking, regionally, Carrboro is doing okay. But one of the things that our CFO and our manager have done in doing this analysis, they've taken our priorities, which for me, is our human services, is making sure that we're taking care of folks who are struggling to hold on, making sure that we're working on affordable housing, making sure that we're working on bike and pedestrian safety, working on our UDO, which is going to allow us to address that growth rate. And, sorry, manager and our CFO and our financial staff have worked out a budget that does that and that sets us on a path to a more sustainable future for Carrboro. It's a little hard to say, but I think folks often think if you've got an income that's reliable from a job, when you think of tightening your belt and battening down the hatches, you think of spending less, but you also probably think about looking at your job and looking to see what else you can do to increase your income. The way that a municipality like Carrboro budgets, with the way that we handle things like our fund balance, when we batten down the hatches, we make our expenditures as tight to our priorities as we can. And when a municipality wants to prepare to weather rough seas, one of the things we actually do is we say, can we ask our residents to shoulder a little bit more to put the town on a firmer footing? It does not come easy. We know that this is hard for folks. We made sure that we included a match that Carrboro has not previously done to the state's longtime homeowner exemption, so that folks who are struggling, folks who are hanging onto their home but they're on restricted incomes, will actually see some tax relief. And in order to do that and to continue to invest in our public infrastructure and continue to invest in our most critical priorities, we are asking folks who are not in that group to bear a little bit more with us. It doesn't come easy at all, but I find that the manager's budget, we've looked at all kinds of different scenarios and variations, but our staff have done a fantastic job threading the needle, finding the best balance that they can. So thanks for listening to me ramble. Open to more conversation. I would also like to second Mayor Pro Tem Nowell's motion.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Frey. I believe Councilmember Posada.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and both. Thank you to my colleagues who have been a lot more eloquent than I could be. But I want to talk a little bit of how I'm looking at this budget, just so that folks here on council, I think I spoke to the majority of y'all, but also folks at home understand how I'm looking at this budget, right? I fully understand to both Councilmember Haven O'Donnell's and the Mayor Pro Tem's point, we are, in many ways, have a fiduciary responsibility as we sit here to the people of Carrboro, to the town of Carrboro, and that's how I'm approaching this budget. I understand, and I do want to just take a moment and say, huge appreciation to our town manager, not only for bringing a budget that reflects a lot of the parties on council, but also some difficult decisions, responding to a lot of things that she came into that were not in her control prior to her coming on board, but also on the personal level for sitting with me and answering a ton of my questions. If y'all see this document, you'll see every single tab where I had a question, and I had to color code it. So I just want to just deep appreciation for you and your team and everyone who took a place in this. And I also show this because I want folks to understand that I took this very seriously, as all of our colleagues here did. And as someone who looks at budgets every year, I had to do one thing, and let's look at what do I see, what can I find that we can either punt or cut back, right? There's a number of things here. There are very limited number of things on this budget that can be cut back. And the first thing I was looking at was the capital projects. What are the things that are only funded by the general fund that don't have any other ties that can either be moved or have been waiting for a long time, or any kind of flexibility on there? And I found very few. So I want to again thank the staff for that piece, right? And of course, I think I'm in the minority in this piece, and it's totally fine, because one of the projects that I'm looking at, it's the Weaver Street capital project, and I think I've spoken to the majority of folks on this council about it. One of my biggest concerns is the money that we're allocating, the $200,000, really does not equate what we're going to need in order for that project to move forward. There's a lot of questions that are yet to be answered, whether or not that project is going to be something that the full board supports. Again, I bring back some of the concerns I've had around bus routes, so if anything, I would want to really have a discussion about what does that look like? Do we continue to have this in this budget? I had some questions about the sustainability line item as well. Looking at how urgent are some of these, right? And I recognize that these amounts do not equate to a massive savings for our community. I don't think so. I don't think that we're really doing much. But what I'm looking at is that fiduciary responsibility on my end as a council member, sitting here looking at this budget. Where is it that we can pull it back or push to the next level or to the next year? So recognize there's a big piece of this budget that we just have to deal with. That is paying back the fund balance. That's something that we're going to have to. We would not even can't even talk about that piece. So recognizing that and knowing that will be then brought back next year when we're looking at general neutral income gives me the thought that we can use that flexibility next year to really address some of these capital projects. Another thing, and I know I've had conversations with several folks on this council, is salaries. And I want to take a moment to, again, mention the deep and important work that our council, not the council, not the council, the staff of this town is doing. The incredible service. And I'll be honest, when I walked in the door today, I wanted to consider what does that 5% look like? Sitting here, hearing some of my colleagues, I'm not so inclined to look at that anymore, and I just want to be clear with some of the folks that I've talked to before this council. I don't want to be disingenuous with either the community that I've spoken to or the council members that I've colleagues here. I think one thing that I would ask is that we remove those two capital projects and push them to next year if the council is amenable to it. Other than that, it's a tough budget. I know it's gonna cost, folks in town are gonna feel it. We understand that, I understand that, but it's also in the moment that we're in, this is where we're at. And unfortunately, if we want to maintain the excellent service that this town provides, we will have to move forward with that.
So, Councilmember Posada, just for clarity, you were talking about the reimagining Weaver Street, and what was the other one?
Sustainability line item for,
For like EV replacement,
Yeah.
vehicles replacement, lighting at parks, building energy assessments, et cetera. Or sustainability
No,
initiatives,
just,
or certain one?
just the.
Which one was it?
It's titled sustainability, but it's EV chargers.
Oh. EV charging?
Yeah,
Just EV charging?
It's titled as sustainability.
Okay.
And it is sustainability initiatives. That is 200,000.
But the EV charging portion?
Well, yeah.
Okay, because there's multiple things tied to that, like replacement vehicles and lighting and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go to Councilmember
If y'all want to
Palmer.
sort out if there's a parliamentary issue, if you're offering an amendment and you want to get clarity before my comments, I'm fine for y'all to keep going.
I think he brought it up for discussion.
Yes, it is for
To
discussion.
see if we could build
Okay.
consensus with that. So you can go ahead, Councilmember Palmer, Haven O'Donnell, Mayor Pro Tem now.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, colleagues, for all of your words tonight from the dais and all of your time talking with me in the time leading up to this. And thank you to staff for, it took me forever to get this tour to happen, but I finally toured Public Works. And I saw the brine mixer that they made rather than purchased. And we do so much more with less in this little town, and I'm really impressed with how much we are able to do. And the other thing that I do in my role as liaison is chat with staff, ask how things are going, and a very common theme is that they are doing more with less, that they're getting feedback and getting expectations as if they had 3, 5 more people, 15 more people than they actually do. But this, I wasn't even sure I was going to speak at all tonight, and this is there have been 3 poems already tonight, and Carrboro is very fond of its poems, so I hope you will indulge me for a 4th one. But to set this up, I have been working on this budget so much that I'm at the point of that I have dreams about it, that I wake up.
Not you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Palmer.
I appreciate it. As Councilmember Haven O'Donnell can attest, because 2 nights ago we were on the phone and I had to multiple times apologize and say I'll call you back because it was well past bedtime. But I have a child that has just recently turned 3 and another who will turn 5 in less than 2 months, and they recently got access to to the 2013 Disney modern classic Frozen, and have been constantly asking for music from it. So if you'll indulge me, these are not all of, but just a few lines from one of the tracks that they keep asking for, which is called Fixer Upper. People make bad choices if they're mad or scared or stressed. But throw a little love their way, and you'll bring out their best. True love brings out the best. Everyone's a bit of a fixer-upper. That's what it's all about. I hear this song at least twice a day. So different people show love in different ways. For some people, it's words of affection. Carrboro, I love you. I have spent so much time on this. I wouldn't have taken this position if I didn't love Carrboro. Some people really need gifts of service. I took a big part of my day off from my day job to go to Central Pines Regional Council, show up and speak during the public comment at another meeting today, because an agenda item on that was adding budget to keep a project to add pedestrian crossings to 54, 2 of which are in Carrboro, which since I got on council, the timeline for that has slipped twice. Twice. And part of it is the struggle to fund these projects. And so it's me showing up saying, as a homeowner who's less than a mile from 54, as someone who commutes on that stretch and sees people waiting to cross busy traffic every morning, and as someone who's on the Transit Partners Committee and recognizes how that benefits Chapel Hill Transit, thank you for having this in your budget. Please approve this. So that was my gift of service today. I think my colleagues have spoken more eloquently than I can for passing what really is a remarkable compromise. This is already a compromise budget. This is already pulling back significantly from what we want to do, from what we know we should do as town priorities, because we can't push more than this in this time, because our hands are very much tied already. Significantly more than half of this increase above revenue neutral is we can't touch it. And everything else that we could touch, it's cutting off our nose to spite our face, right? It doesn't benefit us to cut it. And Lord knows, I've tried to. So thank you for your love of Carrboro and for working with me on this. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. We know your heart's in the right places. All of ours are. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, and then Mayor Pro Tem now. Thank you.
Sure. I'm going to take a very different position simply because I hear the community, and I want to ask, back in April at the work session, I asked if there was some way that we could have a graphic overlay of cumulative impacts that are felt, so that community folks would be able to see what we're all talking about, but to have it laid out so that folks would be able to look at the tax revaluation, their in terms of what's impacting them, their the OWASA costs, the schools, the Duke energy rate changes, on and on. I have not seen that. Manager, I would really still like to see that. I think for every single one of us, it is different, but it is just important for folks to see that we realize what that list of cumulative impacts looks like, and understands that we know what they are and that we see that. So that's one thing. Given that, I want to talk about salaries for a moment, because when I went through the material this weekend, and I apologize that despite my experience, I didn't catch it. But the salaries also, across the board salaries, include salaries for council. I object to having my salary as a council member raised. And I feel in this time that we as a council need to set an example and lead by example. The average salary increase is approximately 3.5%, 3.5%. I would support staff having a salary of 3.5% at this time. Why? Because this is such an unusual, uncertain, and unprecedented time economically, not only for folks who live in our town, but folks who work regionally, for folks throughout North Carolina, for our situation federally, for how the dollar is going to stand globally. We do not know, and possibly in the next 6 months, we'll have a better handle on it. So what I'm looking at when I look at my fiscal responsibility is how do we keep ourselves anchored through the storm with the headwinds still yet ahead of us in full force. And so I would recommend that this council have a conversation, or we at least ask the management to look at, if it was a 3.5% increase, what that difference would look like, how that impacts the budget. And even if it's small, it's not a matter of how large it is. It's a matter of it being consistent with what is the average. I know it doesn't solve the problem, but it makes a huge statement about how we stand with people in community who have lost their jobs, who were furloughed, who you know, are on involuntary employment loss, et cetera, et cetera. It shows that we understand that making a cut, and in this case, it's still a salary increase, but cut from the 5%, that the 3.5 is appropriate. I have a problem comparing Carrboro with Chapel Hill, with Durham, with anybody else. Carrboro does not have the size, does not have the commercial dollars, does not have the revenue. We can't compete. And so fearing that we're going to lose staff, I don't have that fear, because Carrboro is very special to the people who work here. And believe me, they're not working here just for the money. They're working here because of who we are and what we stand for. And part of what we stand for is standing with community. So, so I would like to see those numbers before we make a decision. I feel that's part of what we owe to community, and the perception in community that that, you know, the struggle is shared by all of us. Regarding Councilmember Posada's recommendation, I can support the cutting the Weaver Street line item for $200,000 because that is not absolutely necessary now. We could look at that next year, and that would not be problematic to do so. I think regarding the sustainability money, no one would question my stature on sustainability. I will say I could support not increasing the EVs. EV charging stations right now, to spend money on that, and I'd like to see exactly how much that is, because this document doesn't tell me that. But EV charging stations are non-equitable. only some people can afford EV. I can't afford an EV. And that's not going to happen anytime in the near future because the EVs I'd even be interested in aren't made in this country. And Lord knows what's going to happen with the tariffs. So I think that's something that could be on hold. Regarding the second sustainability item, to provide professional services for designs of electrical and HVAC, I actually want to know more about what that is. So I'd like to see those costs actually broken out, but I could support that. But I think because we are in such a unique time to streamline this budget, even a small fraction, is demonstrative of our awareness and our acceptance of what we don't have control over and our awareness of what we can be doing to stand with community members who are concerned across the board for what they don't know for themselves. And I'll make one other comment about that, and that is that we do see folks right now trying to respond by buffering themselves, by either, buying canned goods, toilet paper. I can't tell you the things people will tell me that they're buying out of fear. Fear is a real thing. And the only way that we can reduce folks' anxiety is to stand with them firmly and say, I am with you, I am here, we will hold your hand. So that's my comments.
Mayor Pro Tem now, then Councilmember Posada.
Thank you. Wanted to respond to a couple points about these particular expenses. As compelling as the argument is to scrutinize this really carefully, I think the expenses in question are one-time fund balance appropriation expenses. They are not going to materially affect the tax rate very much. It's a total of $400,000 that we're talking about, which would translate to about a cent of the tax, but a little less than a cent. But the actual monies here do not have that impact on the tax rate, given that they're coming out of fund balance appropriations for one-time expenses rather than recurring annual expenses. And to defend a little further, with the Weaver Street thing, this is something that, so $200,000. This is a good thing, I think, for us to dwell on, because it's one of these government seems stupid things. $200,000 on its face is not going to accomplish what we have been talking about on the Weaver Street reimagining. We know that. When we sat with some of us got the opportunity to sit with the Carrboro Business Alliance, we were kicking around a lot of possibilities. And staff is looking at this reimagining Weaver Street very closely, and there are some possible hiccups with Chapel Hill Transit. But one possibility in this, one goal that we have in looking at reimagining Weaver Street is to increase revenues, is to increase in particular business revenues and sales tax, because we see compelling evidence from other municipalities that people on foot in downtown areas spend quite a bit more money per hour than people who come in and leave by car. It seems to be a real boon for economic vitality for people to be on foot in a downtown area. So we heard some reticence from the Business Alliance, and a possible, we're not committed to any plan, but one possible plan that I think is cool that comes from the Chamber sponsored visit to Ann Arbor is Ann Arbor closes more of their streets in a very targeted way through parts of the week, rather than, say, a full-time closure of Weaver Street, which might pose problems for Chapel Hill Transit or might cause headaches that our staff is currently digging into. Perhaps we close a handful of other streets from Thursday at 5 to Sunday at 5, as they do in Ann Arbor, which the business community voiced to us would probably have a higher impact on their bottom line, because it would effectively create, like a shop local moment every weekend. I offer that because I want to guard against the perception that we're going to throw $200,000 at putting cheap plastic planters on a plan that is half-baked, but rather that it would be good for us to have a small earmarked sum for us to pursue whatever, if indeed we find a solution like Ann Arbor has, or some other creative workaround, and it requires overtime for street closures. It requires, public safety purchases, for temporary closures beyond what we have. That's a small one-time expense that has very little impact on the tax rate, could impact revenues and is broadly tied to our goals. Ditto with the EV chargers, we have a climate budget with aggressive emissions goals. $200,000 is a relatively small one-time expense. Removing these from the budget is not going to pass on significant savings. Finally, of course, council salaries have come up here, and I'm not a hardliner on this. My initial impulse is that we should consider not taking this raise. So I pulled up my W-2. We get $12,024 a year as town council members, which after taxes for me, because I don't take insurance, some of us do, we have a good plan. I'm lucky that my wife has the state health plan. I get about $700 and some change monthly. So that would be a $4,200 savings at the expense of, this is where we have like a philosophical thing about what these seats are, that I want to be really transparent. $12,000 is a joke. It's a joke that we effectively can only have privileged people do this work, or people willing to take an immense sacrifice to their, lives working in commutes in some of our cases. I'm a remote freelancer, which is part of why this is how I wanted to serve this community, because I can be at Tuesday morning meetings from 9 to 11. I can be at 6 to 8 evening meetings a month. But the idea that it's meaningful compensation is one of the big barriers that we have to people being able to do this work. And I don't intellectually agree with the idea of putting us on a different plane than other employees. I do think that it is, we are managed by HR. We have an onboarding. We get our W-2s from the town accountants. And so like I say, I am not absolutely hell for leather on this. But I think it's moving in the wrong direction to exclude council for what is effectively a nominal savings. Again, $4,200 in a year, I don't think is going to, in total, change quite a bit for homeowners. And it does, I think, fracture some perhaps more symbolic than practical, but I think important distinctions about like who this office is available to.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and colleagues. I think there's a couple of things I want to know, and starting off with salaries, right? And then I'll go into the rest of it. When I was looking at this budget, I was looking at it with my ED hat on. I recognize that that's the wrong way of looking at this budget, because even if that scenario, we're not the EDs, we're the board of directors. And what I tell my board, and you met one of my bosses earlier today, is that I, as the head of that organization, have to be able to respond to the needs of my staff in order for my staff to do the work that they need to do. So now I'm sitting here and asking us to give the town manager that same ability, fully acknowledging that I was coming in here thinking I should take on that role. So I want to take a moment and saying that, one, the town manager is responding to not only the needs of the staff and competition, and yes, we're never going to be the same as a Chapel Hill or a Durham or a Raleigh, or we're unique. You have unique staff, you have dedicated staff, you have people who love the work they're doing. And we also have to compete with the reality that, one of the reasons I'm in my current role is because I loved what I was doing, but I didn't make enough to make rent in Carrboro. So I got a new job. Wasn't great, right? My old employer was here earlier today, El Centro. Had to leave working at El Centro in order to be able to make the funding I needed to make in order to run for office, in order to be at this dais, and in order to represent the community that I serve. And I left a job that I deeply loved because of economic reasons, right? So as we think, and I bring that up because I go back to, we still have a fiduciary responsibility. I completely understand that, and I do not want to move away from that. But the town manager has a responsibility to respond and support her staff. We're already looking at, as Councilmember Palmer mentioned, a compromise budget where we all have the numbers of our composition study. We know how much that we're still behind on that piece. We know again, I go back to the fund balance. We're still paying back what we took out of the fund balance last time in order to do that. So all that to mention, part of the reason that I'm moving away from staff salaries, and again, I want to be fully transparent. We've had conversations with other my colleagues on here about what that looks like, is because I want to award the town manager who connects with our staff on the everyday basis, even on the weekend, right? Which again, I want to say thanks for your responsiveness, like emailing me at 6 p.m. on a Saturday night about budget is incredibly important. I won't do that to my board members. Don't tell them that. It's fine. They know. So anyway, a little levity, but I think my point is very serious on this part. Like, I want to take my role on this council extremely seriously, but I also recognize that it's not my place to tell the town manager how to deal with her staff. That's why they're her staff, not ours. Moving on to the other pieces, board salaries or council salaries. I'll be the first to tell you that we don't make what we need to. I think I've had conversations with Councilmember Frey a long time ago about this. I've had conversations with the mayor about this. I think this, as the Mayor Pro Tem has mentioned, this is a philosophical question. I think the way that not we as in Carrboro, but the United States as a whole, how we allow people to serve in elected office, especially the state of North Carolina, it's extremely exclusive. You know, we require folks to be able to sustain their household and then do what in essence is more than a part-time job for many of us for next to nothing. And I understand that a big piece of that is also we are here to serve. I'm not complaining about that piece. I think it's extremely important that anyone who sits in elected office deeply care about the people that they're representing, about the communities that they're working for. But I also recognize that I'm in a very privileged position where I can serve on this council and not have to worry about the raise, right? Not have to worry about what the salary looks like, because my job allows me to do that. And again, I go back to, I specifically searched for a job that would allow me to do that. I left, again, a job that I care deeply about, a community I care deeply, and I worked since I was a child next to my mother, working with farm workers to make sure that they were being paid what they needed to in order to, you know, serve the town that I love, right? And I want to make sure that that's clear when we're looking at this. So what's my point, right? I'm being long-winded. Point on board raises. I echo us not being separate from other folks on staff. I think for this piece is a nominal raise, a nominal impact on the budget, but I'm not gonna, like, if folks on this council are willing to not take that 5%, for us, I'm willing to support that piece. I think the question is not gonna be solved whether or not we talk about this 5%, but I do not wanna move away from the piece from my standing that simply because it's a small savings, it doesn't mean you didn't save it, right? So I'll go with the majority on that. But I think it's important for us to recognize that whatever decision we make on that board raise does not impact the real need of what having folks being able to be at this dais, access to this, to be able to serve the community like we're serving. That's not being debated here, and that's a debate that we're bringing into something that is comparing apples to elephants. And then I go now to the capital projects. I think point is clear, and I understand that with these two projects that I'm asking for us to push back on, I know that they're key part of what we're wanting to work towards, and I'm not saying we don't move those. And I understand those are very small, limited savings, and yes, I'm not gonna be a huge change to what people's bill looks like, but regardless of whether we do it now or we do it later, it's still gonna have to be paid by taxpayers, right? They're still gonna have to pay for it, whether we do it this year or next year or wherever. So what I'm asking is in this budget, when we already have a lot of changes coming up, and I think one thing that I'll mention also is Councilmember Havendahl had mentioned around fear in the community. So there's a couple of things that I'm hearing from folks. I'm hearing fear around their jobs. I'm hearing fear around ICE. I'm hearing fear around other pieces. But I'm also hearing a lot of folks are resilient, right? So I don't want to let us to #Frozen, Councilmember Palmer, let us be ruled by fear. I also want us to be to understand that, at least in my perspective, even if it's a small savings, I still believe it is worth it at this point. Now, were we not in the budget year that we're in now, would I be saying move forward? Heck, a month ago was asking if we can include a different project that community has been wanting for multiple years, since before I even moved to Carrboro. So I'll close with saying that whether or not the council is in favor with moving these projects, I would still vote for this budget. I'm not gonna do a ceremonial or, what's the word? Performative vote of a no on this, because there's a lot of things on this budget that I fully agree with. But I do ask us to strongly consider that even if it's a small savings, it's still a savings worth doing. Thanks.
All right. So that's Councilmember Posada. I'm not seeing anyone else. What I will say from my seat as,
If you give them a chance, I think.
is there somebody else? Is that Councilmember Merrill? You better go ahead.
I was going to throw in 2 cents.
No, you're fine.
I hear the points. I think there have been a lot of good points made. But ultimately, at least in terms of the capital projects, I kind of fall on the side of empowering the town manager with the tools necessary to direct staff and make good choices. So I think, I'm going to kind of stick with including those in the budget personally. And as far as the council raises, I think it's the 5% is obviously not going to make a meaningful difference to any of our household budgets. I certainly see the value in demonstrating that we are also tightening our belts, but I also see the value in kind of having those tied to other salaries. So what I will do if we pass this budget and we get that 5% raise, and what I would gladly challenge all of you to do, is go ahead and donate that extra 5% to the cause of your choice. So that's what I'll be doing with it if it goes that way. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Merrill. And I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. We hired our town manager, and one of her major charges is to present us with a balanced budget. She has done that in her first complete year as our town manager. She in turn hired our CFO. And that was her charge, as well as the rest of the finance team. In my mind, they have the expertise. We are certainly the ones who will either adopt this budget or not, or ask for changes, as some of my colleagues have mentioned tonight. But certainly I lean into their expertise very heavily. This is why they have the positions that they have. And again, I want to say how much I do appreciate our town manager, our CFO, his team, the department heads, everyone who came together. This is a balanced budget. It is not, I would not say that it's ideal for the simple fact that there are things that folks are concerned about, jobs, the OWASA rate hike, the reeval, and I think we're all concerned about that. But I do believe that our town manager and our CFO have presented us with the best case budget scenario with some very key investments related to affordable housing, sustainability, land use, capital projects, nonprofits, our free transit services, and of course something that's really important, which is our staff. And our staff having raises, and also the maintenance of current service levels within our community. I don't think it will be like this next year. I can't see into the future, but I do believe over the next several years we may not be facing what we're facing today. It doesn't feel that great. It's hard. This whole budget conversation, everything has just been really difficult. But again, there are a lot of moving parts with this budget. There were structural imbalances, things that our town manager inherited that have to be corrected so that we can move forward in the future for a more sustainable Carrboro and continue this current service level that I think that we all enjoy. So I'll just tell you from my seat as the mayor, as it relates to salaries, I go to work every day. I have a full-time job. I'm also your mayor. I serve because I love people. I love service. And so I don't make a living on the mayor's salary, nor as, when I was a council member, I didn't make a living on that either, So I could go either way with the salaries. I think, that's a whole nother conversation. Or it's something that we can decide here tonight. I don't know how that works with human resources as far as if this council decides, hey, we don't want, the raise this year. We're separating ourselves from the rest of town staff. We are part-time employees of the town. We always have been. These raises have gone the same way every single year. When town staff gets raises, the elected officials get raises. That's just how it's been historically. But I'm certainly willing to do whatever this council wants to do as it relates to the raises or salaries in general. If we're really going to be big, let's not get paid at all. I mean, let's roll all the way over and we just don't get paid at all. I don't think any of us got into this, for the money. I know none of us did. We serve because we love service and we believe that we have something to offer the community as council members and also as the mayor. So, yeah, I will be supporting the town manager's recommended budget. Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I wanted to apologize. I'm the one who initially communicated some weirdness and alarm because in reading the packet when I got it on Friday, I saw that we were separate as a line item in one of the many whereases in the document as formally presented. And I'm working on asking better questions. I understand now. We are part-time employees. Y'all have said it more eloquently than I will, but I do want to know for the future. I don't need that tonight, but I want to know, is that because of North Carolina law, some other, why are we listed separately that way? Why are we singled out in that document? Because that matters to it. If I'm a member of the public who bothers to read our budget, I will see that as a separate line, and it looks weird. And so if we have to have it as a separate line, can we add an additional explanation of that history? This is how we've always done it in this town, and a recognition that it is nowhere near a living wage.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Palmer. I think I'm hearing you ask that elected officials just be rolled into part-time employees and not singled out.
If that's possible, or if not possible, then an explanation for why. But I don't need that tonight to vote for this budget, just to be clear.
And Town Manager Tony, I do have one question for you. So you have presented, you and CFO Chaz, the finance team, and everyone else, you have presented this balanced budget. So this budget is representative of us being seen through fiscal year 26. Is that correct? With no hiccups, no problems with the balanced budget, it's enough to get us over the finish line until the next fiscal year. That's just something I was thinking about. It's not a trick question, really.
Thank you, Mayor. It is a balanced budget based on projections that we know as of today. Sales tax is always a funny, fluctuating projected revenue, so I cannot make guarantees. We monitor the budget. I think you all asked last year to maybe have some quarterly updates on where we are. We would be glad to do that, and the reason we would do that is to just keep you updated on the fluctuations of the budget. And so we monitor it. We will make operational adjustments as necessary. If things changes, the revenues don't come in as we've projected, right? We know how to make adjustments that way. Freeze positions, there are operational things we can do. Stop spending, for example. So I think to say guaranteed, no. But today, I think we've done a decent job doing really good projections of where we think we'll be through the fiscal year.
Okay, that answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you. And so the next update or budget outlook update will probably be when we come back from summer break, or would there be something?
Not
before
that
then
soon.
even?
The fiscal year will begin July 1st.
First.
And probably 3 months or so, 3 or 4 months into the fiscal year, we'll come back with an update.
October-ish, maybe,
October,
no,
into
early
October.
Okay.
Because
Right.
sales tax are on a 3-month delay when we get the receipts. So we'll have better information then. And, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. I appreciate that. Council members, so are there any further comments about the budget or questions? We're still at the public hearing portion where public hearing is closed, but it's deliberation still going on. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to ask that we take time between now and next week to process all we've heard and leave the decision-making till next week.
You mean the 17th?
Yeah, the 17th, I'm
So
sorry.
2 weeks from today.
Correct.
Council members, you've heard the requests. There's an early motion on the floor for the adoption of the budget from Now and Frey. But we've heard Councilmember Haven O'Donnell's request, and I want to know what council members are feeling about delaying for a couple of more weeks, or are we feeling confident enough to take this budget over the finish line this evening? Councilmember Posada and anyone else?
Quick point of parliamentary procedure, and I guess this is a question for the town attorney. Given that there's a motion, it's been properly seconded, it would be the motioner would have to remove before anything else can be
I
considered,
would like to call
correct?
the question.
Yeah, I mean, you have a motion and a second on the floor.
Right, so it's early because we're still in the public hearing phase. We're deliberating. We haven't moved to the adoption yet. Does that make a difference, or it doesn't?
Well, part of it is a little unclear. I think, Mr. Now, what you said is that you'd be in a position to make a motion.
Yeah, but my understanding was we were under item F on the general agenda.
Oh.
Madam Mayor, I also thought that you had closed the public hearing
I did
earlier.
close it, but we were still deliberating. I think that's where
Okay,
the
I thought
clarity
I thought
is
when you
not
cleared it that took us into the
deliberating
next
as
item.
a still part of the public hearing, but close the public hearing for our council deliberation.
Yeah, so I mean, pursuant to.
So that's it's a little not clear there. I guess that's where we need clarity, but I mean, it all is going to run together. I mean, the public hearing is closed. We have been talking, deliberating, asking questions. I did hear the motion. I also heard the second. So I mean, I guess it's okay. I would think so.
But all I'm saying, to me, it's confusing, I'm not blaming you, as to whether or not a motion was made and seconded, or whether a council member stated his intention at the appropriate time.
I said I would like to move agenda item A. That is true.
Yeah.
So I will amend my motion to move agenda item A. um, to adopt the budget ordinance.
How does that fit with the fact that I asked for it to be delayed?
I disagree.
Right, and okay, hold up. Okay, I heard your question, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell. These motions, the motion and the second was out. The intent was out to have the motion and the second. Now, you've said what you said. This is where it gets a little bit murky, Nick, as far as the motion and the second, and then I mean, it could be a matter of any further discussion, and then Councilmember Haven O'Donnell asked.
I believe I have the right to call the question, and I'm going to exercise that right.
Okay. Well, Councilmember Posada. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem now.
Yes.
So if I just want to understand this correctly so I know where I'm at. There was an initial intention to make a motion. There was an initial second intention. We were still not in the general agenda item as proclaimed by the mayor, who is the one that runs these meetings. Now the mayor, if I'm understanding correctly, we are moving into agenda item F. The mayor pro tem has made a motion. I have not heard a second to that motion now that we're in agenda item F. Am I correct on that? So there is no second to the motion made by the mayor pro tem during agenda item F. There is no question to call, therefore there is no motion on the table.
Are we really establishing the precedent where if you say I would like to move, we are not moving? We have done that a lot in terms of regular governance.
Hold on for a second, Mayor Pro Tem now. So from my position here as the mayor with the public hearing, I opened the public hearing. I closed the public hearing. There is council deliberation that I had attached at the end of the public hearing. So now that particular portion, it appears, is over. Council members have asked questions. They've gotten answers. Councilmember Haven O'Donnell has asked that it be delayed. Now, we're moving now to the general agenda for the adoption of the fiscal year 2025-26 annual budget. I did hear earlier the intent to make this motion to adopt. I believe it was Mayor Pro Tem now, and then the second was from Councilmember Frey. It is appropriate now, but Councilmember Haven O'Donnell has also asked for the delay, which could be a part of, is there any further discussion, even after the question has been called. So this is where we are. Councilmember Frey.
Madam Mayor, just in case it helps clear anything up, so Mayor Pro Tem Nowell has now moved the budget. I would like to second that, just to make sure that we're clear.
We are clear, and that is exactly where we are. Thank you for that. Sorry about that, Mayor Pro Tem now. Is there any further discussion? The discussion comes now with Councilmember Haven O'Donnell, who is also asking that we delay until June 17th for the adoption. So this is where we are, and I put that in the, is there any further discussion? I don't know if there will be traction there. There is that motion on the floor.
I would only offer that something of this magnitude, usually we don't vote on the same night as the discussion, and that has been traditionally the way it's handled.
So I appreciate your question as well as your comment. The motion and the second is on the floor to adopt the budget. I think everyone has heard your request to delay for a couple of weeks, but I'm not hearing anyone. So we're going to go ahead and call the question to adopt the budget for fiscal year 26. Are we ready for the question? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. Congratulations, Town Manager Tony, CFO Chaz finance team and all involved, we have adopted our budget for fiscal year 2025-2026.
Madam Mayor, I would also like to move attachment B.
Oh, I'm sorry. Supporting documents A, B, C, and D. Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem now.
Yes.
Second.
So supporting documents, which would actually probably be B, C, and D.
You had it right.
Are we ready for the question?
Checking.
Let me know
Doing
when
them separately, correct?
they're running together.
I'm open to doing them separately if it changes
Separate,
voting.
doesn't matter if we do B, C, and D, the supplemental documents together or separately?
It's okay, you can just do it.
Together? Yes, so we have a motion on the floor for supplemental documents, attachment B, C, and D. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1, and we have adopted the budget. Town Manager Tony, last item, thank you.
Last item is board appointment of selected boards and commission, town clerk.
Good evening. We have one request for reappointment for the Racial Equity Commission. That is the chair, currently the chair, Donald Hawkins. Information was sent to the council, so I will let the mayor take it from here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Joyner. So we do have Donald Hawkins, whom I believe is still the chair of the Race Equity Commission. This is a reappointment, council members, so I would entertain a motion.
I'll move his
Madam
reappointment.
Mayor, I'll second.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Haven O'Donnell and Councilmember Palmer. We're moving to reappoint Donald Hawkins to the Racial Equity Commission. All in favor?
Madam Mayor?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilmember Posada.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. I wanted to follow up on the conversation around the affordable housing or
For Heather.
For Heather, from last conversation, that we were waiting to hear back a little bit about whether or not that candidate met the expert qualifications that are needed by the position.
So, according to staff liaison, she is already on council, so there was no need to do that, but we can adjust and talk about next appointment, and she stated that she was not ready to do the next appointment for those positions, those open positions.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess I was just a little confused because she was named in the.
It was not clear. We received an application. We
Okay.
actually received an application from her, but she had already been appointed.
I understand. Okay.
So it sounds like a little mix-up
Yeah.
there.
It was.
So we had a motion and a second on the floor to reappoint Donald Hawkins to the Race Equity Commission. Any further discussion, council members? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Hawkins has been, he's reappointed. I do believe that brings us to the end of our agenda, unless any council members have anything. Probably not.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, I thought you were ready. Yes, Councilmember Posada, can I get a second?
Seconded.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
7-0, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.